Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Sophia Carter, 28, didn't know what rest meant. Since 7:00 in the morning, she had been on her feet, balancing plates and rushing orders at the restaurant where she worked. But even in the middle of all that chaos, she always saved a moment in her day for something no one else there knew about, feeding a homeless man who sat on the sidewalk nearby. During the short break between lunch and dinner, Sophia grabbed a takeout container, hid it in her backpack, and slipped out the back door. She knew exactly where he'd be, sitting in the same spot on the sidewalk, arms crossed, eyes fixed on some distant point, as if watching the world go by without being a part of it. "Elliot," she said softly, kneeling down in front of him. "Grilled chicken today, and rice with broccoli. I hope you like it." He slowly looked up, like he always did, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "Definitely better than yesterday. That rice tasted like cement." She laughed as she opened the container. "At least it's hot." Elliot, 35, took the food carefully, as if that small gesture meant more than the meal itself. He always had a calm, quiet manner, too calm for someone living on the streets. He never asked for anything, never complained. And, even stranger, he spoke with a kind of elegance that didn't match his torn clothes or the dirty blanket next to him. "How was it in there today?" he asked between bites. "A customer tried to convince me that being allergic to pepper was a reason to get a free dessert. I almost threw a pudding at his forehead." Elliot laughed, a low, short laugh. Sophia liked making him laugh. It didn't happen often, but when it did, it lit up her day more than any tip. The sound of hurried footsteps cut their conversation short. Sophia instinctively turned her head and froze. Across the street, Liam, her fiancé, 30, was walking with a blonde woman, arm around her. They looked very close, more than close. She laughed and ran her hand across his chest. Liam didn't try to hide it. He kissed her. Sophia felt her stomach turn. "That jerk," she muttered, jumping up like lightning. "Sophia, wait," Elliot called after her, but she was already crossing the street like a storm about to explode. "Liam!" she shouted. The couple stopped. Liam looked at her with a mix of surprise and annoyance, like she was a problem he'd forgotten to deal with. "Sophia, not now, not now." She almost laughed in disbelief. "You're cheating on me in the middle of the street, and you're asking me not to make a scene?" The blonde froze. Liam, on the other hand, sighed impatiently. "You're overreacting, Sophia. Things between us have been falling apart for months. You just didn't want to see it. 3 years, Liam." Her voice trembled. 3 years together. You promised we'd get married, that you were just waiting on a promotion, that you'd introduce me to your parents. Why? Why would you do this to me?" He laughed, a cold, mocking laugh. "Because I've grown, Sophia. And you're still in the same place. You're just a waitress." "I have ambition. And honestly, do you really think my family would accept someone like you?" Sophia felt the air leave her lungs. It was like a punch to the chest. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry right there. "Hey," a deep, firm voice spoke behind her. Elliot had stepped forward. He was barefoot, and his clothes were dirty, but something about his posture demanded immediate respect. "You've said enough, man," Elliot said calmly, staring Liam straight in the eyes. Liam chuckled. "And who are you, her janitor?" "No, I'm a friend." "Well, look at that. Even your homeless friend decided to butt in." Liam laughed with contempt. "You should leave before you say more than your conscience can handle." Liam huffed, shot Sophia one last arrogant look, and walked away with the other woman without saying another word. Sophia stood there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was her mother. "Sweetheart, is everything all set for the weekend? Your grandma's so excited to see you, especially to meet your fiancé. You know how she is. All she wants is to see you married before anything happens." Sophia swallowed hard. "Yes, Mom. Everything's fine. He's coming with me. Of course. We're doing great. That's wonderful, honey. It's going to be beautiful." She's counting the days. The call ended. Sophia stood still, staring blankly, clearly overwhelmed. "You lied," Elliot said. "I lied," she replied, out of breath. "Your grandmother wants to see you married. It's her dream. I promised her I'd be married before her birthday, and that's this Sunday." Elliot looked at her for a moment, Then he straightened his coat and said, in the calmest voice in the world, "Marry me." She laughed. "You're kidding, right?" "No. Marry me. Introduce me to your grandmother. After 3 months, we get a divorce. You keep your promise, and I help you with this." Sophia stood still. The sidewalk felt like it had frozen in time. The idea was insane, but her life was already a mess. And Elliot, well, somehow he was the only person who hadn't asked her for anything or expected anything from her. "You're homeless, Elliot." "Maybe, but I'm a homeless man who knows how to be thankful and who respects you. That's already more than your ex ever did." Sophia was still looking at Elliot, like he had just suggested skydiving without a parachute. "You're serious?" she asked again, barely above a whisper. "I am. And, before you ask, no, I'm not crazy. Or at least not any crazier than you need me to be right now." She crossed her arms, still trying to figure out if he was joking or if he really was suggesting this marriage a contract, a favor, a wild agreement between two strangers. "But why?" she whispered, unable to take her eyes off him. "Because you gave me food every day without asking for anything in return. Because I heard how your grandmother spoke to you on the phone. And because maybe you need someone right now, just for a little while." Sophia bit her lip, her heart racing. Her mind was screaming, "No!" But something inside her, maybe the part that always felt ignored, invisible, disposable, was whispering, "Why not?" "Okay," she said finally, swallowing hard. "Let's get married." Elliot gave a small smile, almost surprised that his offer had been accepted. And just like that, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, the two of them headed to the courthouse. The courthouse building was simple and unremarkable, and that late afternoon, there weren't many people around. Sophia was wearing her restaurant uniform under a worn coat. And Elliot? Well, he looked like a character out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Even so, they walked together to the front desk. "We're here to get married," Sophia said without hesitation. The woman behind the counter slowly looked up and eyed them like a crooked painting on the wall. "All right," she said, grabbing some forms. "We'll need your IDs and for you to fill this out quick. We still have time today." Sophia filled everything out with trembling but determined hands. Elliot, on the other hand, wrote with such neat handwriting that it caught the receptionist's attention. She raised an eyebrow. When they were done, they handed over the papers. A few minutes later, they were called into the judge's office. "Good afternoon," said the judge, an older man with white hair and thin glasses. "Let's keep this quick, all right?" But he looked at Elliot with some concern. "Are you sure you want to marry this man, miss?" Sophia didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. You don't even know him." "I know enough." The judge shrugged. "Well, if you both agree, let's make it official." And just like that, with flat, formal words and glances full of doubt and nerves, Sophia Carter and Elliot Hayes were declared husband and wife. They left the courthouse like two kids who had just pulled a prank on the grown-ups. Sophia was sweating bullets. Elliot seemed far too calm, like he had already been through stranger things than a sudden marriage to a desperate waitress. "So, now what?" she asked, standing on the sidewalk with the marriage certificate in hand. "Now you take me to your place. We've got to show up clean and presentable at your grandmother's house this weekend, right?" Sophia let out a nervous laugh. "I just married a stranger." "Oh my God, I married a stranger." "I'm a polite stranger. And I know how to do dishes," Elliot replied, walking beside her like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sophia's apartment was small but tidy, a studio with an open kitchen, a sofa bed, and a tiny bathroom. She walked in and dropped her bag on the floor, still shaking from the adrenaline of the most absurd day of her life. "The bathroom's over there," she said, pointing. Elliot nodded and went in with a clean towel she gave him. Sophia sat on the couch and buried her face in her hands. "I got married to a homeless man, someone I barely know, and I'm taking him to meet my grandmother. What am I doing with my life?" Before she could come up with an answer, she heard the sound of the shower turning on. Minutes later, the door opened, and Elliot came out, wrapped in just a white towel, his hair still wet and dripping over his broad back and defined chest. Sophia's eyes widened. "Wow," she blurted out before she could stop herself. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong?" "No," she stammered. "It's just, you don't exactly look malnourished." He let out a small laugh. "I work out when I can. You can stay in shape with pull-up bars in the park and by running after buses." She laughed, though she was still taken aback by what she was seeing. That was not just any man's body. It looked like something out of a cologne commercial. Sophia looked away, trying not to think too much about the fact that, technically, this man was now her husband. "Put on some clothes," she said, getting up. "We're heading out early tomorrow to visit my grandma. Better get everything ready." The next morning, still in disbelief about everything happening, Sophia was driving her old car down the road to the countryside, where her grandmother, Eleanor, 78, lived. Elliot sat beside her, wearing a plain dress shirt and a pair of pants borrowed from her brother clothes she'd kept since last Christmas. "Nervous?" he asked. "Me? No, just mildly panicking. It'll all go fine. You have a weird gift for staying calm in completely ridiculous situations. Maybe I've had a lot of practice." She looked at him for a moment, curious. "You say that like you've been through worse." "I have." She wanted to ask more, but then the house came into view, with flowers in the garden and smoke curling from the chimney. When they parked, Sophia's mom rushed out to greet them, pulling her into a tight hug. Finally, she said, then turned to Elliot. "And this must be Elliot. So nice to meet you, sweetheart." He smiled and greeted her politely. "The pleasure's mine. Grandma's excited. She's in her room. Go see her, Sophia. Take your husband with you." Sophia felt a flutter in her stomach as she walked down the hallway. She opened the bedroom door, and there was Grandma Eleanor, sitting in her armchair, wrapped in a floral shawl. "Grandma," she said warmly, "I want you to meet someone. This is Elliot." The old woman stared at him, her small eyes narrowed, studying his face closely. "Elliot?" she murmured. "That name sounds familiar. You're not that missing billionaire, are you?" Elliot froze and stayed silent. Sophia looked between the two of them. "Come on, Mom," as if Sophia would marry a billionaire. "You must be confusing him with someone else," said Sophia's mother. Elliot kept his composure, though his heart was racing. Sophia's grandmother looked at him like she was pulling memories from a long, locked box, digging up images from a past he wanted to stay buried. "I think you're mixing me up with someone," he said with a polite smile. "Maybe," Eleanor muttered, still looking at him. "But those eyes. I remember those eyes. You don't forget eyes like that." Sophia stepped closer and gently took her grandmother's hand, trying to change the subject. "Grandma, everything's fine. Elliot's new around here. You must be thinking of someone else." The old woman kept staring for a few more seconds before finally smiling. "You're right, dear. Age plays tricks on me sometimes. I'm getting too old to trust my own memory." Elliot subtly relaxed his shoulders. Her gaze still lingered in his mind. He couldn't afford to be recognized, not now. "He seems like a good man," she said with a smile toward Sophia. "If he takes good care of you, he has my blessing." "He does," Sophia replied, surprised to realize she meant it. Soon after, they all gathered around the dinner table. Sophia's mom had cooked a feast: roast chicken, rice with almonds, potato salad, apple pie, more food than Sophia usually saw in a whole month of work. "Elliot, help yourself, sweetheart," her mom said, pushing a dish his way. He thanked her with a gentle smile and served himself modestly. His movements were graceful, refined, like he'd grown up at much fancier tables than this one. Sophia noticed. So did her mother. "You've got good manners, Elliot." "What did you do before meeting my daughter?" Elliot paused for a second. So did Sophia. "I worked with people in different places. Nothing permanent," he answered with a calmness that felt rehearsed. "Like what?" her mom asked, curious. "Consulting. I help small businesses grow, and now I'm taking a break, starting fresh." The answer was convincing enough to end the conversation. Sophia let out the breath she'd been holding. "Sophia told me you two met recently. Was it love at first sight?" her mom teased. Sophia glanced at Elliot, trying to hide the panic in her eyes. "Sort of," he replied, smiling at her. "It was an unexpected connection, but very real." For a moment, everything felt too real. The way he looked at Sophia wasn't pretend. There was truth, there warmth, admiration. She looked away, her cheeks burning. "What matters is she's happy," her mom said. "And if Grandma gave her blessing, who am I to disagree?" During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. Elliot shared neutral stories, careful not to say anything that might give himself away. Still, every answer he gave made Sophia raise a mental eyebrow. He spoke knowledgeably about wines, mentioned a high-end Italian restaurant, and had a vocabulary that didn't quite fit someone living on the streets. After dessert, Elliot offered to do the dishes, which completely charmed Sophia's mother, while Sophia took her grandmother to the bedroom. "So, what did you really think of him?" Sophia asked, sitting on the edge of her grandmother's bed. Eleanor smiled. "He's special. You know, I've always had a good feeling about people. But he's not telling the whole truth." "That's obvious. He's more than what he says he is, I know," Sophia murmured, looking down at her hands. "But, Grandma, he helped me when I was at my lowest, and I honestly don't know how I would have made it through these last few days without him." Her grandmother gently squeezed her hand. "Sometimes people's secrets don't define who they are. What matters is how they treat us." Sophia smiled, touched. She kissed her grandmother's forehead and went back to the living room. Elliot was just finishing putting the dishes away. "You're pretty good at washing dishes," she said. "I know how to do a few things." "I was a Boy Scout," Elliot replied with a soft smile. She laughed. "I think my mom really liked you, and my grandma, well, she didn't kick you out, so we're doing okay. That's good. Now we just have, 90 days to go? Something like that." Elliot looked at her for a few seconds, more serious now. "You know, if you ever want to stop all this, just say the word. I know, but for now, it's working. In a weird way, but it is." They sat in silence for a moment. Sophia watched Elliot closely. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he spoke, the way he moved. He had said he used to help companies, but there was more to it, something he wasn't telling. "Let me ask you something," she said, almost without thinking. "Why were you on that sidewalk that day?" "Why that spot?" Elliot hesitated. "It felt like a safe place. I needed to disappear. That sidewalk, it felt invisible, and I needed to be invisible for a while." "Running from what?" He smiled, but didn't answer. That night, Sophia slept in her old childhood bedroom. Elliot stayed in the living room on the couch, but neither of them slept well. They were both too busy thinking about each other and about what they were beginning to feel, even if they couldn't admit it. The next morning, they said goodbye to her grandmother with warm hugs and genuine smiles. Eleanor held Elliot's hand longer than expected. "Thank you for taking care of my girl," she said. "She's the one taking care of me," he replied. In the car on the way back to the city, Sophia stayed quiet for several minutes, looking out the window. Elliot gave her space. The ride back to the apartment was quiet, but filled with something new, a light tension, almost invisible, like a thread had been stretched between them. Ever since they left her grandmother's house, she couldn't stop thinking about how he had answered the family's questions with calm confidence and a kind of elegance that doesn't come from life on the streets. But for now, she decided not to ask. Not yet. As soon as they walked into the apartment, Sophia kicked off her shoes and dropped her purse on the couch. "I'm exhausted," she said, stretching. "What about you?" "Me? I'm ready to cook dinner." She looked at him, surprised. "You cook?" "Depends on what you call cooking. I can make omelets, pasta, and, well, that's pretty much it." Sophia laughed, tossing her hair back. "Perfect. Omelets sound great." They went to the kitchen, too small for two people, which made bumping shoulders and quiet laughter inevitable as they reached for spices. Elliot chopped the ingredients so precisely that Sophia paused to watch him. "You have an interesting way with the knife." "Ever worked in a professional kitchen?" "I watched a lot of videos, and I had time to practice." "Too much time. Let's just say life gave me a few forced breaks." She smiled, even though she could sense there was more behind that answer. But Elliot was good at changing the subject, and she didn't want to ruin the mood. Dinner was ready in minutes, and they sat side by side on the couch, plates on their laps, watching some random movie on TV. It was a romantic comedy, just ironic enough to make them laugh. "Look at this," Elliot said, pointing at the screen. They hate each other, then she trips, he catches her, they stare at each other, and boom, they're in love. The famous love trip, Sophia laughed. "Doesn't happen like that in real life." "No?" She looked at him sideways. "No. Real life has bills, chaos, and no one's there to catch you when you trip. You just fall." Elliot looked down for a moment, like her words had touched something deep inside him. Sometimes, someone holds on. Rarely, but it happens. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of meaning. Sophia felt a warmth rise in her chest, something she tried to push back with her next bite of food. After dinner, Sophia washed the dishes while Elliot dried. They split the tasks naturally, like they'd done it 100 times before. "It's getting late," she said. "I work all day tomorrow. Do you want me to sleep on the couch?" She paused for a moment. They'd never talked about this. Since the wedding, They'd slept in separate spaces, almost like roommates. But now, she hesitated. "No, you can sleep on the mattress. I'll take the couch tonight." Elliot frowned. "Sophia, it's fine. Really, you need rest too." "Okay then. But if you want to switch later, just wake me up." She nodded, drying her hands. While he went to shower, she made up the mattress with clean sheets and left a blanket nearby. When he came out, he was wearing a loose t-shirt she had lent him and a pair of shorts that barely hid how strong he was. Sophia pretended not to notice, but it was impossible to ignore. Elliot had an athletic, defined body, and yet his eyes were calm, gentle, never aggressive. He carried both strength and kindness in the same body. She turned off the light and lay down on the couch, but sleep didn't come. The quiet in the apartment was only broken by the sound of his breathing from across the room. And then, as if reading her thoughts, "Sophia, do you regret it?" She turned to the side, resting her face on the cushion. "Regret what? All of this? The marriage, the craziness, me?" She stayed quiet for a moment. "No, not yet. Not yet. Well, there's still time, right?" They both chuckled softly. The silence returned, but this time she didn't want to sleep, not with that feeling in her chest. She got up quietly and went to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The night outside was calm, the city breathing under soft lights and distant horns. "Can't sleep?" Elliot asked, appearing beside her. She shook her head. "My mind won't shut off. Mine either." They stood there, side by side, looking out at the street, their shoulders brushed slightly. His breath was close enough for her to feel its warmth. Sophia turned her head and found him looking at her with those intense eyes, honest and dangerously close. "Elliot, shake." He moved in closer. His nose brushed hers. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken desire. Their lips almost touched. Almost. Sophia closed her eyes, but at the last second, fear spoke louder. She pulled back, lowering her head. "Sorry," she murmured. Elliot just nodded with a small smile. "It's okay." It wasn't the right time. She returned to the couch, her heart pounding, confused. She lay down without another word, and for the first time that night, Elliot didn't say anything either. In the darkness, each of them thought about what could have been and what inevitably might still come. The next morning, Sophia woke to the soft light coming through the gaps in the curtain. She turned on the couch, her body sore from the awkward position, and looked toward the mattress where Elliot had slept. It was empty. She sat up quickly and took a few steps toward the door. It was slightly open. As she opened it a bit more, she saw Elliot leaning on the balcony railing, his back to her, the phone held between his shoulder and ear. His posture was tense, his voice low and steady. "I know he's moving funds from the holding account. I've already had last month's transfers checked. We've got almost everything. We just need one more recording." Pause. "No, I can't come back yet. One wrong move, and it could all fall apart. And you know that." Sophia stepped back before he noticed her. Her heart was racing. That wasn't the voice of someone just trying to start over. It was the voice of someone on a mission, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She slowly backed away and returned to the living room. When Elliot came in a few minutes later, she acted as naturally as she could. "Good morning," he said, his hair tousled from the wind. "Morning," she replied, avoiding his eyes. "You were up early. Couldn't sleep, huh?" Sophia went to the kitchen and started making coffee. She tried to focus on the simple tasks, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. One more recording. Holding account. Can't come back yet. She didn't know much about Elliot's past, but she was starting to realize that what he was hiding was much bigger than just pretending to be a homeless man. After breakfast, Elliot offered to go out and buy bread. Said he needed a little walk. Sophia stayed behind, alone in the apartment, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled close to her chest. She turned on the TV, just to have some background noise. She flipped through the channels without thinking until she landed on a business news program. That's when she saw it. On the screen was a photo of two men in suits. One of them was Elliot, but he didn't have stubble or wear simple clothes. He was in a suit, surrounded by reporters. The caption read, "The disappearance of Elliot Hayes, still a mystery. Missing billionaire may be on the run." Sophia felt a chill run up her spine. "Billionaire," she whispered. The reporter went on. "Elliot Hayes, heir and CEO of one of the country's largest investment firms, vanished without a trace just after fraud allegations surfaced inside the company. There's suspicion one of his partners is involved. But so far, no solid evidence has been found. Police are considering 3 possibilities: escape, abduction, or voluntary disappearance. She turned off the TV without thinking. The face was the same. The voice, the eyes. Those eyes her grandmother swore she remembered. It wasn't a coincidence. It was him. The same man who ate takeout on the sidewalk, who slept on a mattress in the living room, who cooked with her in the tiny kitchen, was a missing billionaire. She stood there, frozen, trying to piece together the reality she thought she knew. She felt betrayed, used, lied to. But at the same time, she remembered the little things, his kindness, the way he cared for her grandmother, the quiet moments full of meaning, the almost kiss. When Elliot came back with a bag of bread, he found Sophia sitting with her arms crossed, the remote still in her hand. He sensed the mood immediately. Did something happen? Is there something you want to tell me, Elliot? He stopped in the middle of the room, looking for her eyes. About what? Don't pretend. Not with me. She stood slowly, pointing the remote at the TV. I saw you on the news. Elliot Hayes, missing billionaire, possibly on the run. They said that's you, isn't it? He didn't answer, and the silence said enough. Since when? She pressed, voice shaky. Since when has all of this been a lie? It was never a lie, he finally said, but it wasn't part of the plan either. Sophia gave a bitter laugh. Not part of the plan, Elliot? You showed up in my life like you fell from the sky. You agreed to marry me. You came into my house, my family. And all that time, you were hiding that you were a millionaire. Billionaire, technically, he said out of habit. But when he realized how that sounded, he looked down. Sorry, that came out all wrong. Are you kidding me? He took a step forward, but she moved back. Don't touch me, Sophia said, her voice cracking. I trusted you. I brought you to meet my grandmother. Her voice wavered again. I was starting to like you. Elliot looked like he swallowed hard. His eyes were full of something he was trying hard not to let show. I was going to tell you everything. I swear. I just needed more time. My partner is trying to destroy everything I built. He's been stealing money from the company. I faked my disappearance to investigate it all quietly, with help from a trusted friend. It was the only way to stop him, without putting more people at risk. And then you came along, and I didn't expect to feel anything for you, Sophia. She shook her head, tears running down now. But I did. Too late, Elliot. She walked to the door and opened it. Leave. Sophia. Go. Now. He hesitated for a second, but understood. He grabbed the bag he was still holding and walked out without another word. The door shut behind him, and with it, something inside her seemed to break too. Sophia didn't sleep at all that night. The apartment felt heavier without Elliot there. Even when he didn't say anything, his presence filled the room with something that now seemed gone and left a strange emptiness behind. She curled up on the couch, staring at the wedding ring still on her finger. Why was she still wearing it? Why hadn't she taken it off the second she learned who he really was? The truth was, she didn't want to let go of the feeling. As confusing as everything was, that small ring on her finger represented something that, even though it started with a crazy agreement, had become more real than she ever imagined. I was starting to like you. She had said it, and it wasn't a lie. On the other side of the city, Elliot was in a cheap hotel room, far too small for a man carrying so much of the past. He stared at the ceiling, his phone resting on his chest, turned off. Since leaving Sophia's apartment, he hadn't had the courage to call anyone, not the lawyer, not the friend helping him gather evidence against his partner. Nothing made sense anymore. Her words kept echoing in his head. The look of disappointment on her face hurt more than any corporate betrayal he'd ever faced. He had never lied about his feelings, not once. But hiding who he was, even if he had a good reason, now felt unforgivable. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, remembering the first time Sophia called him by his name, the first time she really laughed at one of his silly jokes, the first time he thought, if everything goes wrong, at least I got to meet someone like her. 2 days went by. Sophia was coming back from the restaurant, exhausted, her mind numb from routine. Life had gone back to normal, or almost, but everything felt different, less colorful, less interesting. She got home and, like always, dropped her bag on the couch. But when she turned on the light, she noticed something new, a small white box on the kitchen table and, next to it, an envelope. Her heart started racing. She walked over slowly and picked up the note. I didn't come back for me. I came back for you. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to leave behind something that belongs to you. I'm rooting for you, wherever you are. Eli. Inside the box was a ring identical to hers, along with a keychain with a miniature bouquet, simple, discreet, but full of meaning. Sophia sat down, holding the items in her hands. She might not have been ready to see him again, but she couldn't pretend she didn't still feel something. That night, she lay in bed with a heavy heart, hugging her pillow like she was trying to hold on to a piece of everything they had shared. The next day, on her way to buy coffee at the bakery on the corner, she stopped when she saw the news playing on a TV behind the counter. There was Elliot, surrounded by reporters. "And what about the fraud accusation within your company, Mr. Hayes?" a journalist asked. Elliot, serious, answered firmly. "The evidence was turned into the authorities today. My business partner will be held responsible for every misstep. While I was away, I gathered everything needed to prove my innocence. And now I can breathe." Sophia stood there, watching every second. He looked so different from the barefoot man she had met on the sidewalk, but at the same time, exactly the same. On her way home, she passed by the sidewalk, where she had first met him, the same spot, where she had given him that first meal, the same tired but honest look in his eyes. There was something folded in the corner, a blanket, Elliot's blanket. She knelt down, touching the fabric gently. It felt almost like finding a ghost she herself had imagined. That night, she did something she had been avoiding. She opened her phone and typed his full name into the search bar. Articles came up, interviews, videos, and then an old feature from before everything happened, an interview where he was smiling next to his father, talking about the value of building an empire with integrity. She heard him say, "My father always taught me that trust is the most expensive thing there is, and the most fragile. Once it's broken, it rarely comes back." Sophia felt her eyes fill with tears. She knew now he wasn't just a billionaire trying to hide. He was a man trying to save his own name, and along the way, he found hers. The next morning, when she opened her front door to leave, Sophia found another envelope on the ground. Her heart skipped a beat. She picked it up with trembling hands and read, "Today is the hearing that will decide the future of my company. I don't know if I'll lose everything, but at least I didn't lose my conscience. I just wanted you to know that I still dream about that almost kiss. Elliot." She closed her eyes, feeling the world slow down just a little. That night, she dreamed about him, not the billionaire version in a suit, surrounded by cameras, but the man with calm eyes who laughed when she burned the rice, who did the dishes in a soaked shirt, who slept on the mattress next to the couch and asked if she wanted to switch places. And in that dream, the kiss finally happened, no interruptions, no fear, no lies. It was late afternoon when Sophia decided to leave the house. She had spent the past few days trying to escape her own thoughts, but the truth was, they were still there, pressing on her chest, whispering memories she couldn't erase. Even after everything came to light, something inside her kept remembering Elliot as the man who laughed while peeling onions with her, who shared a torn blanket on the couch, who looked at her like the world had paused for just a second so that look between them could happen. But now she knew. She knew everything, or at least she thought she did. Determined to move on, or at least pretend she could, she walked to the neighborhood bookstore, a place she used to go when the world felt too big. She ran her fingers along the book spines, trying to distract herself, when she heard two women talking on the other side of the shelf, and now he shows up like nothing ever happened. That's just like the rich. They disappear when it suits them, and come back when it's safe. But did you see his video? He looks sincere. I don't know. There's something in his eyes, like he's really sorry. And that one sentence? Which one? I haven't lost my conscience. Sophia's stomach turned. She didn't want to hear this. She didn't want his name still hanging in the air. Or worse, in her thoughts. She went back home, trying to push it all away, until her phone buzzed with an unexpected message. Unknown number. You need to know what he did for you. Sophia frowned. Before she could respond, another message came through, this time with an address and a time. No name, no explanation. For several minutes, she just stood there, staring at the screen. She felt ridiculous for even considering going. But curiosity, or maybe the need to fully understand, won out. At the scheduled time, Sophia arrived at the address, a small office building downtown. She took the stairs to the third floor, where she was greeted by a man in a suit with gray hair and a serious expression. "Miss Carter, I'm Thomas. I worked with Elliot for many years. He asked me to give you something personally, in case the two of you drifted apart." "What kind of something?" "The truth. but in a way that only you can decide what to do with it. He handed Sophia a flash drive and pointed to the room next door. There's a computer in there. You can watch it alone. I'll wait out here. Sophia entered with her heart pounding, closed the door behind her, and plugged in the device. Just one file. She double-clicked, and the video began. Elliot appeared on the screen, seated, wearing the same simple clothes he'd worn during those early days in her apartment. The background was white, plain. He looked tense. "Hi, Sophia. If you're watching this, it means I messed everything up again." He sighed and ran a hand over his face. "I wanted to tell you everything from the beginning. I wanted it all to be clean, honest. But I came into your life at a time when disappearing was my only shot at staying free. And then you showed up, and somehow you gave me peace." He paused, looking straight into the camera. "I agreed to that wedding because I thought it would be a quick act, just an excuse, an escape. But in you I found something I didn't even know I was searching for. Truth. I needed that more than I realized. You were the first person in a long time who didn't want anything from me, no favors, no deals, no numbers. You just wanted to feed me and talk to me. And I fell in love with you before I even realized it." Sophia swallowed hard. The words felt so genuine. They hurt even more. "I left this video because I know I might never get another chance. I know I could lose everything, including you. But if someday you want to know everything, no masks, I'll be waiting. And if you don't, I'll understand. Either way, thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Elliot." The screen went black. Sophia sat there, not moving. The words still hung in the air. It wasn't just an apology. It was a raw, heartfelt confession. It was real. When she came out of the room, the man named Thomas handed her an envelope. "This is for you. Elliot arranged for the apartment to be yours in case he disappeared again. It's in his name, but the paperwork is ready to transfer. I can't accept this. He wanted you to have something of your own, something no one could take away." Sophia had no words. She took the envelope with her but didn't open it. She walked down the stairs, not entirely sure where she was going. On the way back home, she stopped at a park, sat on a bench, and took a deep breath. Her phone vibrated. Video message received. "Sender, Elliot." She hesitated. It was a more recent recording. The video opened with him standing in front of a window at night, the city lights glowing behind him. "One more thing. I wanted to show you something I've never shown anyone." The camera shook a little as he turned it to reveal a photo. Wall-printed pictures, carefully pinned up. Sophia recognized many of them. The day she took him to visit her grandmother, a moment of her asleep on the couch, a blurry photo of her laughing in the kitchen, probably unaware he was watching. "I saved every second," he continued, now back on screen, "because, even if it didn't last long, it was the best part of my life in a long time. And if I have to disappear again, I just want you to know it wasn't a performance. It wasn't a plan. It was love." Sophia pressed the phone to her chest. No matter how hard she tried to fight it, the tears were already falling. It was love, messy, interrupted, unlikely. But it was. The next morning, she woke up with a clear mind. If there were still doubts, she wanted to face them one by one. For the first time since Elliot had left the apartment, Sophia returned to the spot where he used to sit, the sidewalk, where their story began. There was no one there. But as she got closer, she noticed something taped to the wall, a printed photo. It was of her and Elliot, taken by someone without them noticing, sitting side by side, laughing. On the back of the photo, a handwritten note, "I still dream about that almost kiss." She smiled through her tears. That night, Sophia sat on the living room floor, lights off, going through all the messages, the videos, the gestures. Slowly, the resentment started giving way to longing, and the longing to understanding. She hadn't been lied to. She had been loved in a messy, confusing, fearful way, but loved truly. And once she realized that, she knew whatever was between them wasn't over yet. 2 weeks had passed since Elliot's last message. 2 weeks of Sophia waiting, even if she didn't want to wait. 2 weeks where the silence spoke louder than any excuse. The apartment felt different now. The laughter that once echoed off the walls was gone. The smell of coffee in the morning didn't taste the same, and the folded mattress in the corner was a daily reminder that someone had been there and wasn't anymore. Sophia tried to stay as busy as she could. She doubled her shifts at the restaurant, worked back-to-back days, cleaned the apartment till every corner shined. But at the end of the day, once the quiet settled in, The emptiness came back. She wasn't sure what hurt more, Elliot's absence or the fact that he hadn't come back to make things right. Life seemed back on track, but the track led nowhere. One afternoon, while she was washing glasses at the restaurant, the manager walked in with a strange look on her face. "Sophia, there's someone waiting for you outside." She wiped her hands, confused. "A customer?" "Doesn't look like it, but she said she needs to talk to you." Said her name is Clara Hayes. Sophia froze for a moment. Hayes. She walked out the back door, and there stood a well-dressed woman with a calm, confident posture, her brown hair tied in a neat bun. Her eyes looked just like Elliot's. "Are you Sophia Carter?" the woman asked. "Yes. Who are you?" "I'm Elliot's sister." The world spun for a second. Sophia stayed composed. "What are you doing here?" Clara gave a slight smile, as if she understood Sophia's reaction perfectly. "I'm here because my brother can't be, and because I thought you deserved to know." "Know what?" "That he still thinks about you every day, that he doesn't regret meeting you, and that he's trying to respect your space, even though it's tearing him apart." Sophia crossed her arms, guarded. "He had time to tell me the truth before. He didn't. Now that everything's out in the open, he disappears." "He didn't disappear, Sophia. He's trying to rebuild everything he lost, not just the company, but trust, his sense of self. He thought that coming back now would be selfish. He said, 'You deserve to decide on your own.'" Sophia felt a tightness in her chest. Part of her wanted to hear those words. Part of her hated how much they still got to her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw who he became when you came into his life, and I saw who he turned back into when you left. I've never seen Elliot so human and so broken at the same time." Clara handed her a small envelope. "He asked me to give you this if you were open to it. It's an invitation, a foundation event for our family. It's tomorrow. He doesn't know I'm inviting you, but he'll be there. And maybe the two of you need to see each other again, even if nothing is said." Sophia stood still, unsure of what to do. When she looked up, Clara was already gone. That night, she stared at the envelope on the table for hours. Picked it up, put it back down, walked around the apartment like every step was part of a debate with herself. She didn't know if she was ready to see him, didn't know if she could bear to see him and pretend she didn't feel anything. But a part of her also knew not seeing Elliot might hurt even more. The Hayes Foundation Hall was elegant yet understated, a place where people talked about investments, charity, and social causes. Sophia walked in, wearing a simple but lovely dress, and kept a low profile among the guests. Many were talking about Elliot's return to the business world. Some said he was a genius. Others called him reckless. Everyone talked about his disappearance like it was the plot of a movie. But Sophia only half listened. She was scanning the room, and then she saw him across the room, in a dark suit, speaking with two businessmen. He looked thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but he stood tall. He was still him, Elliot. She looked away immediately. Her heart jumped, but she kept her composure. She walked over to the appetizer table and pretended to decide between cheeses. And then she heard it. "You came." She turned slowly, and there he was, standing still, tense, waiting for a response. "I wasn't sure I would until I saw the invitation. It was my sister, wasn't it? She said you didn't ask, and that she didn't know she'd end up coming to me." Elliot nodded. "I didn't ask. I thought you needed space. So why are you here?" "Because this event matters for the company's image, but also because part of me still hopes to see you wherever I go." Silence. Sophia sighed. "You could have told me before. Not your name, not the money, but the truth. I know. And even after everything, you let me walk away. You didn't try to come back. Trying would have meant pushing. And after all that happened, I didn't want to step into anything that was still yours. I would have listened," she said, her voice unsteady. "I was angry, but it wasn't the end. I still don't know if it is." Elliot took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to apologize again or to beg for another chance. I just came to tell you that, even if you don't want anything more, I'm grateful for everything. You gave me back the part of myself I had lost in all this before the masks, the contracts, the numbers. You reminded me what it's like to just be someone and to love like an ordinary man." Sophia stayed quiet. A single tear fell, unnoticed. "I'm still hurt," she said. "But I also still remember the way you looked at me when I fell asleep on the couch. And things like that are hard to forget." Elliot gave a small smile, sad but honest. "Maybe we just need more time." "Maybe," she replied. "Do you still have the ring?" he asked, not quite meeting her eyes. She hesitated, then slowly raised her hand, showing the ring on her finger. "I tried to take it off, but something in me wouldn't let me. Then I'll wait, however long it takes." Sophia looked at him for a long moment. There were 1,000 things she wanted to say, 1,000 she wanted to feel, but none of them seemed enough to explain everything. "Elliot," she began, "it's not just about what happened. It's about how we deal with everything from now on. I don't want any more lies, and I don't want to keep running." They stood there for a while longer, surrounded by the soft sounds of the elegant party. No promises, no certainties, just two people, after everything they had been through, finally beginning to understand that maybe there was still a path, even if it was long and winding. In the days that followed, Sophia went back to her routine. But now, something was different. A brief exchange of messages, a good morning from Elliot, a good night from her. Small steps, no pressure. Sometimes he'd show up with a coffee outside the restaurant. He never asked to come in, just handed it to her and smiled. She thanked him, and then spent the whole day thinking about it. One night, he sent her a message. "Last night, I dreamed of the day you took me to meet your grandmother. I just wanted her to know I wasn't pretending. That it was the first time in a long time I truly felt part of something real." Sophia answered with just a heart emoji. It was still too soon for a new beginning, but it wasn't too late to reconnect. And maybe that was what mattered most. Right now, the morning started differently. Sophia was setting the silverware at the restaurant when she heard a commotion in the dining area. Customers were leaning over tables, eyes fixed on the TV in the corner. The volume was low, but the images spoke for themselves. On the screen, a press conference, and at the center of it, Elliot. Sophia's heart raced. She sat down the silverware and walked to the side of the counter for a better view. Elliot stood there, in a gray suit, surrounded by microphones and cameras. But he didn't look nervous. His expression was steady, confident, his eyes clearer than ever. She quietly turned up the volume. "Today, I'm here to present both the public and the authorities with all the evidence gathered over 2 months of quiet investigation," he said, looking directly at the reporters. "Evidence that clearly shows the attempt at embezzlement and fraud by my former partner, Victor Salazar." A stir went through the press room. While I was away, a lot was said. Accusations were made. Some people believed I had run off. Others thought I had lost my mind. But all I did was disappear so I could finally see what no one would let me see. Elliot turned toward the table in front of him, stacked with documents, bank records, security footage, and recordings. He placed his hand gently on top of the stack. "This is what's left of a friendship that lasted more than 15 years. But it's also the foundation of the truth I promised to bring forward. The company I built with my father will not fall because of one man's greed. And, most of all, I will not stay silent anymore." The broadcast cut to reporters commenting on the case, but Sophia wasn't listening anymore. She stood there, frozen, her heart in turmoil, pride, surprise, and an ache that still lingered deep inside. She knew that man, the man who didn't run, who stood his ground, who protected. And despite everything, he was still the same Elliot who used to wash dishes with her at 2:00 in the morning. She went back to work, but the day moved in slow motion. That night, when she got home, she found an envelope under the door. She recognized the handwriting before even touching the paper. "Maybe I've done everything in the wrong order. First, I lied, then I ran, then I tried to fix it. But now, all I want is to truly explain myself, not as a businessman, as a man. Can I meet you at our place tomorrow at 4 p.m.? If you don't come, I'll understand. But if you do, I promise not to run again. Eli." Sophia folded the note carefully and placed it on the table. She took a deep breath. She knew that meeting was inevitable, but now, more than ever, she wanted to know which version of Elliot she'd find there. Our place was the sidewalk, the exact spot where it all began, where she handed him food for the first time, where she saw him in a way no one else seemed to. Sophia arrived 5 minutes early. She was nervous, restless. Part of her wanted to run away, and part of her wanted to stay there forever. Elliot was already there, but not like before. He was sitting in the same spot, wearing dark jeans, a plain t-shirt, and no disguises. He wasn't pretending to be someone else. He was just him. "Elliot," she walked up silently. He stood. "You came?" "I did." They looked at each other for a few seconds. Time seemed to bend around them. "Will you sit with me?" he asked. Sophia hesitated, then sat beside him on the sidewalk, just like before. Just like always. "Did you watch the press conference?" he asked. "I did. And you did what you said you would. And I know how much that must have cost you." Elliot lowered his eyes. "I lost a lot, friends, sponsors. But I got back what really matters. My name and a chance to start over, even if it's alone." "You're not alone anymore, Elliot," she said softly. "Even when I told you to leave, you never left my thoughts. Not for one day." He looked at her, surprised by her honesty. "I never asked you to forgive me because I didn't know if I deserved it. But now, I think I need to ask you something." "What is it?" "To let me try again, from the beginning. No contracts, no wild promises, just as me, with you. What if I'm still scared?" "Then we'll be scared together." Sophia's eyes welled up. She looked down at the sidewalk, then up at the sky. "I don't know how this ends, Elliot. I don't have the answers. Neither do I. But if you want to walk beside me, I'm willing to find out." He smiled, a smile she hadn't seen in weeks, a smile of relief. "I didn't expect to hear that, but I've dreamed about it every day." Sophia smiled too, still a bit shy. "I still want answers, you know. I'm not going to pretend. I trust you completely. But I think, when you disappeared, you took a piece of me with you. I never meant to take anything from you. I just wanted to protect you from my mess. Now, let me into it, and we'll handle the mess together. Is that a deal?" "No contracts," she said, holding out her hand. He took it. Their hands met, firm, like a quiet promise. And in that moment, neither of them said a word, because it had already been said. In the days that followed, they started seeing each other more often, always in simple places, quiet coffee shops, short walks, park benches. They talked about everything except the past. Elliot didn't invade her space. He waited for her timing, and Sophia, little by little, began to allow small gestures, messages before bed, an unexpected visit with flowers thrown together, a quick dinner in the apartment that no longer felt so empty. He didn't sleep there, not yet, but his presence returned, little by little, like a familiar song playing in the background. One rainy afternoon, Elliot showed up with 2 grocery bags. "What's all this?" Sophia asked, confused. "A special dinner. I promised I'd learn how to make something besides omelets." She laughed. "I've got to see this." They spent the afternoon cooking together, laughing at their mistakes, sharing the chores like they used to. But now, there was something different, a new kind of care, a comfortable silence. When it was time to wash the dishes, they stood side by side at the sink, just like old times. Sophia had soap up to her elbows. Elliot's shirt was soaked. "This feels like a movie scene," she said. "Which one?" he asked, laughing. "The part where the 2 people almost kiss, but they're not quite ready yet." He paused for a moment, put down the plate he was holding, and looked at her. "I'm ready." Sophia felt her breath catch, but she didn't back away. "Then kiss me." He leaned in slowly, no rush. Her eyes closed, and this time, the kiss happened gentle, real, without hesitation. It wasn't the kiss of a contract or of a disguise. It was a real kiss. And when they pulled apart, she still had her eyes closed. Finally, she whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. "You have no idea how many times I dreamed of this." "Me too." That night, he didn't leave. And even though they hadn't said anything about it, they both knew that this was the first step towards something new, something unlike anything they had lived before. The silence between them now was different. It was full of presence, of connection, of hope. And for the first time in a long while, Sophia fell asleep with the feeling that she wasn't waiting for anything anymore, because she was already living it. The morning sun came through the curtains, casting light across Sophia and Elliot's faces. She slowly opened her eyes, still lying next to him, and for a brief moment, forgot everything that had happened between them, all the lies, the leaving, the silence. In that moment, there was only peace. Elliot was asleep next to her, one hand stretched out between them, as if even in sleep, he didn't want to let her go. Sophia studied his features. It was strange how different he looked, while sleeping more vulnerable, closer to the man she first met on the sidewalk, the man who had accepted a plate of food with a whispered, "Thank you," as if it was worth more than gold. She leaned in and kissed his forehead gently. Elliot slowly opened his eyes and smiled, still half asleep. "Now that's what I call a good morning. Did you sleep well?" she asked, brushing some loose hair from his face. Like the world had stopped, and for a moment, I wished it really had. She lay back down beside him, facing him, their faces close. Last night felt like a dream. Today still does. But it's real, is it? It is, he said, lightly touching her face. And I want it to stay that way. Sophia smiled, but there was a hint of worry in her eyes. She sat up in bed, pulling the blanket up to her shoulders. I'm scared, Elliot. He sat up too, looking at her carefully. Of what? That all of this is too good to last. That now that we're finally getting it right, something's going to come along and ruin it again. I don't know if I could go through it all over again. He gently took her hand. We can't predict the future, but we can build a stronger present, slowly. No rush, no lies. I just need you to keep being honest, always. I promise. I'm not the same man who sat on that sidewalk, and that's because of you. Sophia rested her head on his shoulder, and for a few minutes they said nothing, just listening to each other's breathing. It was as if time had slowed down on purpose so that moment could last longer. That afternoon, Elliot invited her to go out, but not to a fancy restaurant or a public event. He wanted to show her something that was part of his life she hadn't seen yet. Let's go for a drive, he said with a mysterious smile. Sophia got in the car and let herself go along for the ride. The road was calm, lined with trees, and eventually opened into a more remote area away from the city. After nearly an hour, they arrived at an old country house, simple, rustic, but well cared for. Where are we? This is where my dad used to bring me when I needed to clear my head. After he passed, I come here whenever things get too noisy. Sophia stepped out of the car and looked around. There was a small lake in the back, a porch with a hammock, and the distant sound of birds. It's beautiful. It's real, he said, walking toward the porch. Just like us. She followed, curious. Inside the house, everything was simple. Old books, landscape paintings, a fireplace, and a worn leather couch. Sophia ran her fingers over a picture frame, showing a teenage Elliot next to an older man. Your father? Yes. He taught me that money can buy almost everything except character. I spent years trying to prove him wrong, until I realized he'd been right all along. Would he approve of what you're trying to do now? I hope so. I know he would have loved you. Sophia smiled, touched. And what about you? Do you love me? Elliot stepped closer, just inches from her face. I think I'm starting to. She widened her eyes, surprised by his direct answer. Elliot wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't backing away. She, on the other hand, still felt her heart beating faster than it should. Starting? Yes. And it scares me more than any hit I've ever taken in life. She took a deep breath. Then I guess we're even. They spent the rest of the afternoon on the porch. Elliot made coffee with an old coffee pot that had belonged to his father. Sophia wrapped herself in a blanket, and the two of them sat quietly, watching the sky reflect off the lake. I needed this, she said, holding a cup in her hands. So did I. Have you ever thought about leaving everything behind, just disappearing? I have, many times. But then I realized that running away is different from starting over. Running away is leaving everything behind. Starting over is choosing where to stay. Sophia looked at him. And you chose to stay? Wherever you are, that's where I'll be. She smiled. That's a little scary too. Most good things are. On the way back to the city, the silence between them felt comforting. But Sophia knew what she felt was no longer just affection. It was more deeper, more present, more necessary, and at the same time, it was still being built. Elliot, on the other hand, was driving with a calm look in his eyes, so different from the tense man he had been in recent months. He was at peace, and part of that was because of her. A few days later, Elliot showed up at the door of Sophia's restaurant. He had a different expression, serious, but also a bit anxious. Can I talk to you for 5 minutes? She asked the manager for a moment and stepped outside with him onto the sidewalk. What's going on? I was invited to give a talk about rebuilding reputations in the business world. It'll be at a university, and I'd like you to come with me. Why? Because you're part of my story, and because I want the world to see the woman who helped me find myself again. Sophia smiled, surprised. That's very symbolic. You're starting to get sentimental, Elliot. That's your fault. She looked at him, thoughtful. All right, I'll go. The day of the talk came, and Sophia went with him to the auditorium. Elliot stepped up onto the stage, took the microphone, and began to speak with confidence. For years, I believed my success defined my worth. And when I lost everything, including my identity, I realized that what really matters isn't what we have, but who's still by our side when we have nothing left." He paused and glanced discreetly at where Sophia was sitting. And in that emptiness, I found someone who reminded me of who I was, who saw me even when I had nothing to show, someone who offered me a plate of food and a second chance. Sophia felt her cheeks flush, but she didn't look away. That person isn't just part of my story. She's the reason I'm here today. Applause. A lot of it. And in that moment, she knew something had truly changed. Elliot was no longer a secret or a wound. He was a new beginning. After the event, they walked together to the parking lot. "Did I say too much?" he asked playfully. "You said exactly what needed to be said, and I think I finally understand how you feel." "And how do you feel?" She stopped, took a deep breath, and looked him straight in the eye. "That maybe I'm starting to fall in love with you too." Elliot stepped closer, gently touching her face with both hands. So, in the end, was all the chaos worth it? Every second, they kissed right there, between the cars, without fear, because now there was nothing left to hide. The days following the talk were unlike anything Sophia had experienced before, not because of what was happening around her, but because of what was happening inside her. For the first time in a long while, she woke up with peace in her heart, not the absence of problems, but the presence of something that helped her face each small challenge with more ease. Elliot. They didn't put a label on what they had. They didn't make promises, but their actions spoke for themselves. The good morning texts, the spontaneous dinners in the small kitchen, the aimless evening walks, everything was subtle and incredibly real. Sophia knew she was falling in love, not with the man who used to be in the news or the millionaire CEO, but with the man who laughed when he messed up a recipe, who remembered how she liked her coffee, who listened quietly when she needed to talk. Elliot had changed too. The anxiety that used to follow him, the tense, alert look, had all given way to a calmer, steadier presence, as if he had finally returned to who he was before it all, before the pressure, the overwhelming ambition, the disappearance. That night, while they were washing dishes together, Sophia turned and asked, "Do you think we would have met if none of that had happened? If I hadn't seen you on the sidewalk that day?" Elliot wiped his hands on a dish towel and thought for a moment. "I don't think so, and that scares me." "Why?" "Because that means I had to lose everything to find what truly mattered." She looked at him. "Sometimes, that's how it is. We only see things clearly when there's nothing left to hold on to. And you were what was left." He gave a half smile. "And also what stayed." She laughed. That sounded romantic and tragic at the same time. That was the idea. A few weeks later, Sophia received an unexpected message from Elliot. "Can I take you somewhere tomorrow?" "It's not far, but it matters." She replied with an almost automatic yes, curious about the mystery. The next morning, he showed up at her door with a simple bouquet, wildflowers tied with a piece of red fabric. Nothing fancy. "I just thought it suited you," he said, handing her the flowers with a shy smile. "Simple and beautiful," she teased. "Exactly." They drove down a dirt road until they reached a place Sophia didn't recognize, an open field with a wide view of the mountains in the distance. The wind was strong, and the sky was clear and blue. In the middle of the field, a wooden structure was being built. A few people were working with boards and stakes, measuring, cutting, hammering. "What is this?" Sophia asked as she stepped out of the car. "It's the beginning of one of my new social projects, a support home for families experiencing homelessness." She stood in silence, taking it all in. "I promised I'd use everything I've been through to do something meaningful, not just to clear my name, but to truly start over. And this is the first step. It's beautiful, Elliot. It's not yet, but it will be. And I want you to come back here with me one day, when it's ready. I want you to see how much you've changed the way I see the world." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't do anything. You did everything." They stood there quietly, watching the work in progress, her hair blowing in the wind, the sun warming their shoulders. Then Elliot's face turned serious. "I've been thinking a lot about how to close this chapter, how to move from the starting over to the new." She looked at him, curious, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It was white, with her name handwritten on it. "Open it when you're alone." Hours later, back at home, Sophia sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. "Sophia, if you're reading this, it's because I couldn't say it out loud, because I still lose my breath when you look at me like that. When I sat on that sidewalk months ago, I thought I had lost everything, but the universe showed me I hadn't lost what really mattered. I just hadn't found it yet. And then you came along, with a simple gesture, with eyes that saw me in a way no one else ever had. And I changed. And I grew. And I fell in love not with what you did, but with who you are. And now, I want to ask you something. Not to run away with me, but to stay, to build. Not a perfect story, but a real one. One step at a time, with love, with truth, with you. If you say yes, meet me on the hotel rooftop tomorrow at 6:00 p.m. I'll be there, always. At the agreed time, Sophia climbed the stairs of the hotel with her heart racing. When she reached the rooftop, she found the space decorated with soft lights, small candles, and petals scattered around. Elliot stood with his back to her, watching the sunset. She walked up slowly. "Too beautiful to be a coincidence," she said, referring to the orange sky painting the horizon. He turned around. He was wearing a light-colored suit, elegant, but without a tie. "You came." "Of course I did." Elliot reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it slowly. "I'm not here to repeat promises. I'm here to make just one, that everything that comes next will be better than everything that came before. Because now it's with you, for you, because of you." Sophia felt the tears fall, but she didn't say a word. She just held out her hand. He placed the ring on her finger gently. "Is that a yes?" he asked. "That's a finally." They embraced. And there, under the glowing sky, in the quiet and the smiles, a new chapter began. 3 months later, the wedding took place in Eleanor's backyard, nothing fancy, but full of meaning. Sophia wore a light dress with delicate lace, and her hair down. Elliot waited at the altar, smiling, eyes full of emotion. During the vows, he said, "I've been a millionaire, a beggar, accused, and cleared. But none of that defines me. You taught me that love isn't a plan, it's a daily choice, and I choose you. Today, tomorrow, even if everything falls apart again." Sophia tried not to cry, but it didn't last. "I spent years thinking I needed someone to save me, and then you showed up not as a hero, but as a human being. And because of that, I choose to walk beside you, to face the chaos and also the peace." They kissed as friends, family, and even old co-workers from the restaurant clapped louder than anyone else. At the reception, Sophia's grandmother called the two over. "Now I can rest in peace. I saw my girl get married, and to a good man. You've got many years ahead, Grandma," Sophia said, kissing her forehead. "It doesn't matter how much time I have. My heart is at peace." Elliot held her hand. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. I recognized your eyes, and eyes don't lie." During the last dance of the night, Sophia and Elliot were barefoot, slowly spinning under the garden lights. "You know what I love most about you?" she asked. "My charm? Your persistence in staying, in trying, in loving me your way, even when it seemed impossible. I only managed it because you saw me before anyone else did." She stopped dancing and looked at him with intensity. "Because you were always visible to me." He kissed her, and the world disappeared for a few seconds. There, in that garden, with nothing left to prove, they finally understood. It wasn't their past that defined them. It was what they had built from it together.